Welcome to She Who Heals, the spiritual business podcast for healers to take up space and talk about the services they provide. When healers serve more lives, more people are able to live in the peace and joy this world has to offer. I'm your host, healer, and spiritual business coach, Alyssa K. Barrios. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of She Who Heals. I'm so beyond grateful to be here right now in this moment talking to you about something that has come to my attention that many of us are experiencing, and if you are not experiencing it in this exact moment, then you may be finding this episode at the time that you are experiencing this, because we are human, we live in a world filled of dichotomies, and with that being said, just like there is light, there is dark. So today's episode is about embracing your shadows. Embracing your shadows is truly about flowing through the shadows, riding the wave of the shadow, versus drowning in the shadow, judging the shadow, and talking down on the shadow. So first you may be asking, okay, but what is a shadow? A shadow is a part of us that we may be trying to hide, avoid, ignore, right? Numb is a really good way to describe that. And the shadow is most likely something that you've done that you're not very happy with, that follows you. Or maybe it's something that you feel that doesn't resonate with you, but yet you're struggling to speak on it. So a shadow could maybe be not enjoying the workspace that you're in and it being a really uncomfortable space, but yet you're trying to just pretend it's okay and tell yourself over and over again, I can do this, everything is fine. But then all of a sudden you notice yourself completely break down, feel lost, feel like you are just so unhappy with life. And sometimes our shadows can lead us to the question of what's the point? So the reason why I say embracing your shadows is because I'm here to remind us that we are human living in a very human world. So I want you to think of yourself as a bowl. That's pretty much our aura. And I want you to think of the world being water, and you're filling up the water in this bowl. So a lot of what you could be feeling could be a lot of what the world is either putting inside of your energy or something that you've soaked in just by living and existing in this world. So when our shadows come up, this is actually a time for us to clean and wipe away everything that does not feel good to us, anything and everything that has harmed us, anything and everything that has really made us feel uncomfortable, unworthy, ugly, like whatever you want to describe, feelings of not loving yourself. This is what a shadow can help us uncover. And this process has really, of course, not been something we're taught. It's absolutely something that is not of priority to others in the world, such as maybe your boss, if they're not familiar with this type of work. Or maybe a parent, or maybe, unfortunately, maybe a spouse that doesn't understand nor able to be emotionally mature to handle when you are experiencing a shadow and when you're experiencing a really heaviness in your emotions, in your mental space, in your physical body. So a shadow can look like being overly exhausted, like just so exhausted and you have no explanation to why you're so tired. It can be a heavy feeling of self-doubt, a heavy feeling of what's the point of this world anymore, or maybe even a mental thought of constantly telling yourself that things aren't working in your favor, you're a failure, nothing's going to work out. So when the shadow is coming up, it's actually most likely we've reached a level of exhaustion and it's time for us to face what we have been needing to face. Or if you're like me, I've done this work of this healing work, shadow work for I want to say up to 10 years already, but maybe between 8 to 10. And by doing this work all the time, I do notice that if I am in a consistent flow of feeling good, everything working out in my favor, if this goes on for maybe like 10 to 14 days, and I still haven't addressed my shadows, I hit a point of absolute exhaustion. So imagine this like being your phone you have your phone on the charger, it's charging, and then all of a sudden your battery dies, right? And so that's just showing that like all of this beauty, all this light, all of this love, yes, it's beautiful and yes, it exists, but there has to be some type of charge coming in. And that charge typically looks like, yes, self-care, lots of journaling, but also when you're diving into that self-care, when you're diving into that journaling and you're feeling good, you're still vibrating in an energy that is of high love, high light. So when it comes to our shadows, that's also being human. It's saying, okay, I have to face and give myself a day to address my fears, address anything that has been coming up in my mental state and my emotional state that I try to ignore or avoid. And maybe you're ignoring or avoiding this through your glasses of wine. Maybe you're ignoring or avoiding this through calling your friend to gossip and just talk. Maybe you're ignoring or avoiding your shadows by going to the gym like I do all the time, right? And so, yes, going to the gym, having relationships with your friends, and maybe having a glass or two of a beverage, doesn't even have to be alcohol, of something that makes you feel comforted, right? And so, yes, as amazing as that all is, great, but that's still not going to substitute our relationship with our shadow. The relationship with the shadow is an inevitable conversation that we get to experience as a human. But the beautiful part of embracing the shadow is understanding two different things. Your shadow does not define you, it just wants to be loved and acknowledged by you. Second, your shadow can also be a culturally created version of yourself. So what do I mean by that? If you're around those who maybe suffer from addiction, or maybe they suffer from abusive behavior, or maybe they suffer from high anxiety or depression, you can actually attract that energy if you're around those energies, if you are also not being aware of these type of energies around you. So for example, for me, I know that I have to actually have a lot of distance and space from those that I know are not living in their highest light and unfortunately struggle with forgiveness or struggle with kindness or struggle with characteristics that I know are full of love and full of light. Does it feel good to have to separate and distance myself? Absolutely not. Are there times where I'm like, okay, am I being judgmental? Am I actually talking down on this person? Okay, let me be truthful and think of the best case scenario. And then I'm able to move forward. However, most of the time I do have to keep my distance, and I'm learning to not feel guilty for that. Because of course, in this life and in this journey, many of us have given our loved ones, friends, family, many opportunities to make us feel good and also feel good about themselves. And if they're struggling to feel good about themselves, then that's the type of shadows that we unfortunately do not want to be around us, because then that's going to come into our space. Just like how I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, filling up the bowl with water. So with all of this being shared with you, I again want you to understand that your shadows are here to be loved and nurtured. So an example of how I've loved and nurtured my shadows is I used to be very dramatic about my shadow. Of course, self-doubt would come in because I'm running a very successful business. I have to show my face in many different places. I have to take on the responsibility of supporting others and guiding others. I also have to take responsibility of managing my finances and managing accounts, and so much that comes to running a business. So the old me used to sit in my shadows and have self-doubt, avoid taking action, would just want to sit in my bed and cry and just not even want to look at the sun, not go outside. Things that I knew were simple and made me feel good, such as taking a walk, I would avoid. Or maybe I'd call my friend in tears or just ask, hey friend, can you listen to me? And then I noticed that I was actually giving my shadow away to someone else. I was actually asking them to face it. And in the process, I had to realize and understand that I'm avoiding myself, and instead I'm putting this responsibility on others, or I'm victimizing myself. And yes, I completely understand when we've actually been hurt and abused, there are times where we do have to say, holy crap, I've been hurt. I've been hurt. But when it comes to our shadow, most of the time, it's just a really low vibration that we are most likely experiencing. But when we face it, we are able to overcome it. So I've been working in lots of light, lots of manifestations coming to existence, and I've actually been really mentally and emotionally strong, and even physically strong, spiritually strong. All of the strength and all my energies have just been so profound, and I know that I'm only getting stronger. However, I hit a breaking point. I was absolutely exhausted. So in this quote unquote breaking point, it was pretty much like boom, pause, stop. God aligned my schedule to give me the time to have this moment to myself. I could have easily judged and said, you have to keep doing, action, 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 no rest, no journaling all day, meditating all day. No, like get to work. You got to get to work. But that would have been me, once again, avoiding my shadows. So what do? I allow myself time and space in the morning. I stick to my morning routine, even though I didn't want to get up for yoga. My body was hurting during this yoga, and I knew, okay, your physical body is showing that it needs rest. So what did? I did as much as I could in my yoga class, and then I went home. I again tried to stick with my routine, even though I didn't want to do any of it. Didn't want to get to my journaling. I didn't want to get to my reading. I was literally in my shadow of nothing feels good right now. And I could have totally spiraled and said, nothing feels good. Nothing works anymore. Why do I even teach this? But I had to pause and say, okay, you're in this anxious energy of nothing really sounds or feels good right now. So what can I do? Well, that's usually where I just go to meditation. So I rest for a moment and I say, wow, I'm actually really tired. So then I take a nap. And then something that really helps me now that I'm learning through these shadows is saying, okay, I might not be feeling my absolute best right now, but if I was to visit a project or if I was to complete something off of my to-do list, what can I complete that's going to make me feel really, really good tomorrow? Because I know that this shadow is not going to stay here forever. So what do I have the energy to be able to do and get ready for tomorrow? Most likely there's going to be 10 things on my to-do list and only one of those is going to feel like, okay, I can do that. So what did I do? I went back into my master's program and I did the last step from my last course. And then it led me to identify something that I did not want to identify. I had to watch a video on preventing sexual assaults in college and universities. And holy crap, was that absolutely triggering. I felt seen, I felt supported after watching this video, and I also felt really excited to know that other students are going to be learning about how you can prevent sexual assault. Right. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful lesson, but it was very triggering. And in that moment, I had to actually face a lot of that shadow, that one I'm ashamed of and I'm avoiding and I just don't enjoy talking about. Right. And so, of course, I felt even more heavy. I was like, really, universe, really, God, why was I guided to do that? So then what did? I just allowed myself to feel and be honored and be supported and also say, yeah, that was part of my story. And what did I have to do? I literally dove back into a really deep, deep sleep. And in this second nap that I took, yes, I took 2 naps in one day. I can't even believe it. I actually put sound baths on because I said, you know what can I do that's even deeper healing? So sound baths, sound frequencies, it's really good for the water, for the emotions, for the body internally. So please use them. So I dove into a lot of rest, right? And so that was pretty much my whole day. It was literally rest. I didn't even feel like getting dressed for the day. Didn't feel like doing any of my hair and makeup. But then I thought, okay, what's going to make me feel good tomorrow? And there were a few things I needed from the grocery store. So I said, all right, I'm going to play with this. I don't feel like going anywhere. If anything, I wish I could just be in bed and stay here. But there was a part of me that said, okay, but we're also doing this. You've gotten your 2 naps in. You're doing great with work. The truth is, things are actually happening. You're just not feeling the best. And it's okay to be able to face your shadow. And so what did? I threw on a bucket hat, which made me feel fun. I threw on some cute clothes that they matched, but they were just an outfit I wouldn't typically wear. But it just, I don't know, it brought some like fun and different energy into my space. Went to the grocery store and I said, ooh, maybe I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll go grab a coffee as well. Actually, no, I didn't feel like doing any of that. I literally went to the grocery store, got what I needed, and came back. Was it the most fun grocery store visit? No, but at least I did something that I knew was going to make me feel good the next day or maybe the next day. So I did all those things. And by the end, when sunset hit, I typically, when the sun goes down, my energy feels a little bit more calmer. It could be me just being really in sync with the moon and being really in sync with my emotions now after so much work that I've done, that once the sun goes down, I feel so at peace. And so I threw on candles and then I grabbed my whiteboard and I started working. And in the process of working, I started writing down all of these fears that I was having towards my next offer. And you guys, this is an example of the shadows actually asking to have you acknowledge them. And so as I'm writing down all of these fears, I was like, holy smokes, none of these fears are true. None of these fears are true. And luckily I've worked with a healer and I've worked on my journey and I've done the work so much for myself that I don't even have doubt in myself anymore. Instead, I just know how to acknowledge fears, right? And in this book I'm reading called Winning by Tim Grover, he talks a lot about fear versus doubt. Doubt is hoping not to lose, and fear is focusing on win. So if you're doubting yourself, then you're focused on the loss and you need to get rid of that, stop that, realize how valuable you are, realize how strong you are, realize how capable you are, and then address the fears. Well, what if I let people down? Well, what if I actually suck? Fine, that's okay to have all these fears, but now you're focused more on winning and you're going to keep moving and taking action despite those fears. So in this shadow of identifying all of the fears I had with work, I felt so free, and I felt like so much that was actually stored inside of my body that I had no idea wanted to be talked about was finally acknowledged and released. And you guys, by the end of that day, I got paid really well. I had a great conversation with my partner. I went to bed feeling great. Okay, well, the next day comes. Shadow came again, and I was just absolutely exhausted. My work schedule shifted. I ended up taking action because I have client calls on these days, and I realized, okay, these shadows are going to stay with me forever. What and how can I show up that allows these shadows to be sustainable? So what that means is, how do I want to practice responding to these shadows now and in 10 years from now? Do I want to change my whole schedule because I'm quote unquote not feeling well? Or do I want to tell myself, you're absolutely fantastic and great at what you do, no matter how your energy is feeling in these calls? No matter if your shadow is trying to intervene with you or intervene with your next step. Your shadow is only here to help guide you, right? And so I thought, great, I'm not going to shift any of my scheduling because that just doesn't feel good for me. I don't want to do that in 10 years from now. My clients mean the absolute world to me. I want to make sure that I'm consistent with them. But it's also going to say, I'm okay if things in my other schedule have to shift, right? And so that was my new story. It was consistently reminding myself, you're amazing, you're fantastic. This too shall pass. How do you want to show up when these moments happen instead of hating them, putting myself down? Like, that no longer has to be my story, and it no longer has to be your story too. So when you feel your energy is very low, when you feel that there's a heaviness in your heart, I want for you to do your best to take care of yourself and trust the process. Try to avoid the world if possible as much as you can. And when I say avoid the world, I don't mean hide in a cave and ignore them, even though that's very, very indigenous of us, and that's very like human of us to actually want to hide in our cave. However, sometimes you may not have that privilege and ability to do so. So that doesn't mean to, but it also means you don't have to tell everyone and anything about you in the moment. You get to keep your energy super sacred when you're in those shadows. And if someone says, hey, what's wrong? How you doing? Are you off today? Are you not feeling too well? You can say, yeah, I'm just not having the best day, but I'm getting through it. And that's it. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You don't have to do anything more and put yourself down for not doing it. You don't have to ever put yourself down, right? And maybe in that shadow, something happens at work and maybe you do make a mistake, but you get to love yourself in that mistake and even be honest, like, I'm so sorry if I made this mistake. I'm not feeling the best and I'm trying to get through this day even better, right? And so we just never know what's going to happen in this journey called life. We never know what type of role we're playing in someone else's journey. So trust the process, love yourself, give yourself lots of grace, and know that there is no finish line. There's just this way of living consistently, because who you consistently are is going to develop this sense of confidence within yourself that's going to be shared with the world. So thank you for being here. Embrace the shadows. Yes, there's so many beautiful things in life that feel really good and feel really loving and light. But there's also parts of us that are going to feel really heavy, maybe even really sad or frustrating. And the thing is you get to embrace all of you. And when you choose love and you choose forgiveness and you choose compassion for yourself, then also you're able to do that for others. So I love you. If this episode resonates with you, amazing, like, share, and maybe share it to a loved one. If you're really struggling right now and you're struggling by yourself, I want you to know that you don't have to do any of this healing work alone. I have one space available for the Healed Woman Experience, and I would be more than honored to support you through your journey and help guide you through your shadows and help guide you through maybe your overly highs, right? That could be a whole other episode of talking about our overly highs and our overly lows. I used to get overly high over things and my energy just went everywhere and I ended up crashing, literally sometimes, thank God I'm here. But when we're like overly high and overly excited, we can lose a lot of important energy. And then when we're overly down and overly sad, we can lose a lot of important energy. So it's really important that we're finding this level of peace and bliss and contentment while we continue to dream bigger. So if this resonates with you, if there's still a memory that's really haunting your memories and your visions and interfering with your day-to-day, and maybe you feel like you're a magnet to bad things happening, there is so much love that is here to be shown to you. So there's a lot of healing that needs to be taken place, and that's safe and that's okay. So one last spot for the Healed Woman Experience as of now. You can find the link to apply in the show notes. I love you guys and have an amazing rest of your day.